This isn't a Harley clone, it's a Harley killer. For $1,800, riders are dumping tradition and grabbing practicality, and dealers can't keep them in stock. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this bike might end Harley's future. What's happening? When the first shipments arrived, nobody paid much attention. A motorcycle priced under $2,000? Local Harley-Davidson dealers in southern states scoffed. They had chrome monsters on the floor priced at $20,000 and up, backed by brand loyalty older than most of their customers. And yet, within 3 months, everything changed. The shock wasn't just that the bike sold, it was who bought it. Veterans weren't trading down. Young riders were opting out. Mechanics, delivery workers, college students, and even older hobbyists fed up with Harley's bloated pricing were showing up to test ride a machine that promised freedom without debt. The value was so obvious that it felt like a dare. Why pay $20,000 for a Harley when you could get a reliable commuter for $1,800? Harley's floor staff watched it unfold in disbelief. The showroom buzz that once belonged to Milwaukee now belonged to something anonymous, efficient, and unapologetically unpolished. It was the ultimate insult. A motorcycle no one took seriously was now stealing serious market share. This wasn't a lifestyle machine. It was a life machine. And for the growing number of people using motorcycles as economic tools, not social statements, it was the only thing that made sense. But the secret to this bike's appeal wasn't just how it looked or what it cost, it was how it was built. Are you ready to see why this $1,800 motorcycle is shaking up the industry? It's more than just a deal. It's a shift in how we view motorcycles. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below for the full story. The engine that gets it done for pennies. Pop the seat. Look under the tank. Everything about this motorcycle's engine screams simplicity. A single-cylinder, air-cooled powertrain that's been refined for decades in global utility bikes, not redesigned for flash, torque, or bragging rights. No fancy modes, no Bluetooth, no liquid cooling system, no ride-by-wire. Just a basic motor that starts every morning, runs every day, and costs almost nothing to maintain. Urban mechanics love it. One shop owner in Dallas joked, "It's like working on a lawnmower, but tougher." That wasn't an insult. It was high praise. The bike doesn't come with expensive electronics that fail after 2 years. It doesn't have finicky sensors or proprietary fuel maps. It just runs and keeps running even in heat, cold, and rain. Maintenance is straightforward. Spark plug, oil change, maybe a chain tension. That's it. No Harley service schedules. No expensive diagnostics. No waiting 2 weeks for parts. And while the specs don't scream performance, less than 15 horsepower, under 60 miles per hour top speed, the bike isn't built for drag strips. It's built for cities, for stop-and-go traffic, for potholes, for unpredictable roads. And in that environment, its power-to-weight ratio feels exactly right. Compare that to Harley's entry-level bikes, which are heavier, more complex, and often overpowered for casual riders. The budget bike has no desire to compete with a Street Glide or a Fat Bob. It doesn't need to. Its mission is completely different and perfectly clear. Get you where you need to go every time without drama. The result? It's already bleeding into Harley's balance sheets, marketing meetings, and future product plans. Looking for affordable gear that actually works? We've linked the top-rated budget helmets, jackets, and gloves right below. Real value, no hype. Harley didn't just get underpriced, they got outsmarted. For decades, Harley-Davidson believed they were above competing on price. From the top floors of their Milwaukee headquarters, they watched trends rise and fall with the confidence of a legacy untouched. But beneath that polished veneer, something fatal was growing, an assumption that no one would ever dare challenge their place at the top of the cruiser food chain. Now, a motorcycle selling for under $2,000 has done just that. But this wasn't just about price, it was about strategy, and Harley got outmaneuvered at every step. As a former Harley strategist, I remember internal debates about small displacement motorcycles. We would entertain the idea, run the numbers, and then always decide the same thing. Small bikes were for other brands. Harley's brand, we said, was built on torque, steel, and scale. Entry-level models weren't seen as a gateway. They were seen as a dilution. We watched as Honda, Royal Enfield, and even Chinese companies built affordable bikes for international markets. Still, we believed the American rider would never defect. That was our biggest mistake. What we failed to see was that motorcycling in the United States was evolving. Younger riders didn't want a badge, they wanted transportation. Middle-class buyers didn't want prestige, they wanted reliability. And all the while, this new wave of ultra-affordable motorcycles was getting better, faster, and smarter. Harley didn't just lose a price war. They lost the strategic foresight to see it coming. But the real damage wasn't done in the boardroom. It happened in the showrooms, where decades of emotional loyalty began to crack under the weight of brutal economics. Premium pricing was their religion. Now it's a curse. For years, Harley-Davidson didn't just charge a premium, they defended it like a sacred tradition. To buy a Harley was to buy a legacy, a lifestyle, a sense of belonging. For longtime customers, myself included, the price tag was never just about materials or horsepower. It was about identity. You paid extra because it meant something, but in 2025, that belief is unraveling. And it's not happening in a loud, dramatic way. It's happening slowly with a kind of painful disbelief, a quiet realization. This just doesn't make sense anymore. I walked into my local Harley dealership 3 months ago thinking I'd upgrade. My current bike is nearly 8 years old, and I was ready for something new. But when I saw the price, almost $23,000 before any custom work, I froze. I couldn't justify it. Not when I had just seen a friend ride away on a brand new bike for under $2,000. Sure, it wasn't a Harley, but it worked. It was reliable, and it got him from A to B every day with a full tank that cost less than a movie ticket. What's worse is that Harley's pricing no longer matches reality. Maintenance is expensive, parts take time, and insurance for these heavy cruisers keeps going up. The romance is still there, but the economics are broken. Loyalty, it turns out, has a financial limit, and I'm not the only one feeling it. Across the country, dealers are seeing would-be Harley buyers walk in with reverence and walk out with regret. And those lost buyers, they're not waiting for Harley to change. They're moving on. Harley's decline isn't visible from a billboard. It's happening zip code by zip code. And when they finally tried to respond, they didn't fix the problem. They poured fuel on it. When Harley tried to respond, it backfired. Badly. After months of watching sales slip, Harley-Davidson did what every legacy brand eventually tries to do. They attempted a counterattack. It wasn't loud or flashy, no Super Bowl ad, no rebranding campaign, just a quiet announcement, a new model, lighter, cheaper, more accessible. It was supposed to recapture the entry-level rider and close the widening gap. But when the bike finally hit showrooms, the reaction wasn't excitement. It was confusion. The pricing was still high, starting at nearly $8,000. The design felt unfinished, a blend of retro inspiration and cost-cutting plastic. But the worst part? It didn't feel like a Harley. It didn't rumble. It didn't intimidate. And it didn't inspire. Riders didn't just reject it, they didn't even notice it. In some dealerships, it sat untouched for weeks. No test rides, no waiting lists, just awkward silence. Internally, Harley executives knew they had a branding crisis, but instead of confronting it, they tried to dance around it. They called the new bike entry-inspired. They said it would be a lifestyle gateway. But the truth was simpler. They couldn't build a real competitor to the $1,800 disruptor without cannibalizing their own brand. And so they hesitated. And while they hesitated, they bled. In an age where clarity and value are everything, Harley delivered confusion and compromise. The attempt to reconnect with the everyday rider backfired, and it sent a new message. Harley isn't just struggling to compete. They're struggling to understand who their riders have become. But while Harley flailed, other brands were taking notes and preparing for a price war that would hit the entire industry. Kawasaki and Royal Enfield are quietly slashing prices. Inside the strategy rooms of Kawasaki and Royal Enfield, panic has taken a quiet but unmistakable form. While executives won't admit it publicly, internal documents now reflect a troubling trend. Both companies are urgently recalibrating their pricing structures to compete with a motorcycle that costs less than $2,000. The surge of demand for this bargain machine has forced them to look not just at price points, but at entire product lines that now feel overbuilt, overhyped, and overpriced. For Royal Enfield, a brand that had finally begun making inroads into the American cruiser market, the timing could not be worse. The Super Meteor 650 was supposed to be its global middleweight triumph, but it's now facing steep resistance. Not because it lacks performance, but because its price tag is suddenly twice that of the best-selling rival. Enfield's leadership is pushing dealers to increase flexibility, which is corporate shorthand for start slashing prices. At Kawasaki, the reaction is even more surgical. Product managers are now discussing not only promotions but outright platform revisions. The Eliminator 500, positioned as a modern entry-level cruiser, is seeing tepid interest at nearly $7,000 when riders are walking into dealerships and asking for the one that costs less than $2,000. That kind of consumer demand doesn't just shift preferences, it obliterates product strategy. Neither brand expected to be outmaneuvered by a machine that barely markets itself. And while they try to catch up, a much larger wave is already approaching. And it's coming from overseas, container by container. Chinese and Indian brands are flooding the U.S. market. The shipping manifest started changing in late spring. What used to be a slow trickle of off-brand motorcycles from China and India has turned into a steady, strategic flood. According to one international logistics broker, ports in Los Angeles and Savannah are now clearing dozens of containers per week, filled with motorcycles priced between $1,500 and $2,500. Most of them fully street-legal, modern-looking, and targeted squarely at first-time riders. And they are selling. What makes this surge so dangerous for American brands is that it's not being led by flashy names or corporate giants. It's powered by newer, aggressive manufacturers that most Harley-Davidson dealers have never even heard of. Brands like Zongshin, Lifan, and Bajaj are landing bikes in the United States at prices lower than Harley's riding gear. And they're not junk anymore. These motorcycles are fuel-injected, disc-braked, LED-lit, and equipped with digital displays. What they lack in heritage, they make up for in value. The shipping broker, who moves freight for several of these manufacturers, described the movement bluntly. They're not coming to play in the American market. They're coming to own it. The cost advantages are too significant for most competitors to fight back. Chinese and Indian plants operate with labor costs, material sourcing, and production efficiencies that no American or even Japanese plant can match. The rise of these ultra-cheap imports isn't just a sideshow anymore. They're beginning to dominate Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and the showroom floors of independent powersports dealers. And while the average Harley-Davidson sits unsold, this new wave is being uncrated and sold out within days. For American dealerships, the message is clear, and the fallout is already hitting home. The American dealership model is breaking apart. When the motorcycle costs less than the sales tax on a Harley, there's a problem, and Harley dealers are feeling it in real time. Across the United States, showroom floors are turning into graveyards of expensive, unsellable inventory. Riders are walking in, not asking about chrome packages or extended warranties, but pointing to a phone screen and saying, "Can you beat this one? It's only $1,800. The average Harley-Davidson dealership was built around high margins, low volume, and premium branding. But the arrival of ultra-affordable bikes has shattered that model. Dealers can't move inventory without slashing prices so deep they lose profit entirely. And with floor plan financing piling up interest every day, many owners are being forced to quietly liquidate, selling bikes to used wholesalers just to cover the monthly banknote. A dealership owner in Ohio, who's been in the business for more than 2 decades, described the shift bluntly. "We used to sell dreams. Now we can't even sell discounts." Some dealerships have stopped ordering new Harley inventory altogether, focusing instead on used trade-ins, smaller off-brand bikes, or even electric bicycles. Anything that sells fast and doesn't require a 5-figure commitment from buyers. The damage isn't just economic, it's spiritual. These showrooms once symbolized achievement, community, and freedom. Now they echo with unsold promises. While Harley's brand managers tweak marketing campaigns and push mid-year refreshes, the frontline reality is unmissable. Dealerships can't compete when the entry price to riding drops by 70% overnight. And while Harley showrooms fight to survive, Honda is quietly thriving by pivoting to the one thing Harley never took seriously: affordability. Honda's smallest bike is suddenly its most important. Inside Honda's U.S. Operations Center, a surprising shift is taking place. The models once used as bait, small, affordable machines like the Grom, Navi, and Rebel 300 are now driving the company's momentum. What used to be entry points for future real riders are suddenly Honda's top-performing products. And it's not a fluke, it's a pivot. According to a senior planner at Honda's motorcycle division, the change began subtly. In 2023, small bike sales began to surge in urban areas, then accelerated in college towns, then spread to commuter-heavy suburbs. Riders were no longer using small bikes as stepping stones, they were using them as permanent primary vehicles. And Honda listened. Now, instead of treating entry-level bikes as fringe products, the company is re-engineering its strategy around them. More ad spend, more dealer incentives, more accessories. Even production lines have been adjusted to prioritize these models over larger, slower-moving sport and touring bikes. The message inside the company is clear. This is the future of volume. And while Harley tries to defend its legacy with louder exhausts and deeper financing plans, Honda is racking up first-time buyers, many of whom had never even considered owning a motorcycle until they saw one for under $2,000. These buyers don't care about lineage or symbolism. They care about getting to work, saving gas, and having fun without debt. For decades, Honda's small bikes were seen as cute, disposable toys. Now they're the backbone of an entire market shift. And just as Harley once defined what it meant to ride in America, Honda's budget models may be defining what it means to ride next. For Gen Z, riding isn't a statement, it's a solution. For a long time, riding a motorcycle was about identity. It was about rebellion, self-expression, and making a loud statement. But for Gen Z, that idea feels outdated. Today, riding isn't about being seen, it's about getting somewhere. Fast, cheap, on their own terms. And that is exactly why a motorcycle priced under $2,000 is outselling Harley-Davidson in more than a dozen states. It is not because this bike comes with a story, it is because it comes with a purpose. College students, rideshare drivers, and part-time gig workers are choosing this low-cost machine not to signal status, but to solve a problem. Public transportation is unreliable, gasoline prices are unpredictable, and used cars are often more expensive to repair than to replace. So when a fully functional motorcycle, lightweight, fuel-efficient, and easy to ride, hits the market at less than the cost of a new smartphone, it immediately becomes more than just a bike. It becomes freedom in a box. Harley-Davidson, with all its chrome and nostalgia, was never going to win over this generation. Gen Z doesn't need loud pipes or endless customization options. They need utility. They need independence. And most of all, they need transportation that doesn't destroy their already strained budgets. For this generation, riding is not about living a dream. It is about making life work. And while this new motorcycle is meeting the moment, it is also unintentionally exposing something that Harley would rather keep quiet: what is happening behind the factory gates. Labor is watching Harley decline with gritted teeth. Inside the walls of Harley-Davidson's manufacturing plants, the mood has shifted. It is no longer pride that drives the line. It is pressure. Pressure to move bikes that are not selling. Pressure to maintain hours when demand is shrinking. Pressure to keep believing in a brand that no longer seems to believe in itself. For many factory workers, it feels like the company they helped build is turning into something they no longer recognize. The workers are still showing up. They are still punching the clock, but the morale is different. There is a bitterness growing, quiet, unspoken, but heavy. Fewer shifts, less overtime, tighter budgets for the brake room, for safety gear, for even basic maintenance. And all of it points to a truth that the company will not say aloud. Sales are slipping, and the layoffs might not be far behind. Many of these workers have been with Harley for over 10, 15, even 20 years. They remember the boom times. They remember when people lined up for new Softails, when the plant hummed with energy, and every weld felt like part of American history. But now, they are building bikes that dealers can't move. They are building dreams that fewer people are buying, and they are watching headlines about a no-name import outselling them for a third of the price. No one wants to say it out loud, but the feeling is there. Harley's core is cracking, and the people who once built it with pride are now stuck wondering whether they are building the past or being left behind by the future. And they are not the only ones asking hard questions, because back in New York, Wall Street has finally noticed the smoke. Wall Street can't figure out what to do with Harley. For years, Harley-Davidson was considered a legacy brand with stable margins, predictable demand, and loyal buyers. It was not a growth rocket, but it was steady, dependable, profitable. But now analysts and shareholders are reviewing the latest earnings reports and struggling to make sense of a story that no longer holds up. One chart after another is flashing the same message. Harley is bleeding, and the future looks shaky. The issue is not just shrinking sales, it is shrinking relevance. Investors are realizing that Harley's premium pricing strategy, once its strongest asset, is now its biggest liability. The market is shifting fast, and the bikes that Harley sells for $15,000, $20,000, even $30,000 are being outpaced by machines that cost less than a budget laptop. That changes everything. It breaks the valuation model, it scrambles the customer forecast. It calls into question whether Harley is even in the right market anymore. Some on Wall Street are calling for a pivot, drop the prices, scale down the lineup, chase the entry-level rider. Others say it is too late for that. Harley doesn't have the manufacturing agility. They don't have the brand permission. They are locked into a perception they can't afford to break, but also can't afford to keep. The most dangerous signal of all? Silence. Analysts are starting to downgrade the stock. Investor calls are getting tense, and nobody seems to have a clear answer about where Harley fits in a market where the most desirable bike costs less than $2,000. Harley's legacy is in jeopardy, but what's driving this $1,800 motorcycle surge? Hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below to join the conversation and stay up to date on the biggest trends in the motorcycle world. But perhaps the most powerful blow isn't in the numbers. It's in what this shift represents. This bike wasn't a threat. It was a wake-up call. The truth is, no one expected this. Not Harley, not dealers, not investors, not even the riders themselves. A motorcycle priced at $1,800 was supposed to be a sideshow, something cheap, imported, and forgettable. But instead, it became something much bigger. It became the moment the entire motorcycle industry was forced to wake up. This bike didn't win because it had better horsepower. It didn't win because it had a heritage logo or decades of racing lineage. It won because it offered mobility at a time when everything else felt out of reach. It answered a question that legacy brands forgot to ask. What do today's riders actually need? And the answer wasn't prestige. It wasn't power. It was affordability, accessibility, simplicity. Harley-Davidson didn't lose to a better motorcycle. They lost to a different mindset. While they were chasing exclusivity, the market had moved on. While they were crafting messages about freedom and legacy, a new generation was looking for practicality and independence. The $1,800 motorcycle became the symbol of that shift. To some, this was a betrayal of what motorcycling stood for. To others, it was a long overdue correction. But either way, the message was clear. The future doesn't belong to the loudest engine. It belongs to the clearest answer. And now, as Harley stares down the most sobering question in its history, the industry waits. Because this wasn't just a sales anomaly, it was a realignment. And what happens next will determine whether Harley remains a legend or becomes one. The $1,800 bike that outsold Harley is a wake-up call for the entire industry. Will Harley adapt or will it fade? Like, subscribe, and comment below to keep up with the revolution in motorcycle culture.